Express, the official card of the NBA.
DeMar DeRozan, your leading scorer in the first half between the Spurs and the Thunder. 12 points for him. San Antonio with a 9-point lead at the break. Welcome to the American Express halftime court. Chris Miles here with Brendan Haywood, David Griffin. Let's get right into it. Bryn Forbes, 0 for 6 from downtown, but the rest of the Spurs, 6 for 11, knocking down those open shots. And how are they getting them?
Well, for the most part, and we'll see here in the video, they're moving bodies and ball in a way that a lot of teams don't. You're seeing a lot of teams focus everything they do on isolation and pick and roll. And in this situation, it's a dribble handoff from LaMarcus Aldridge. Davis Bertans is able to get separation here, step out, because the defense is so keenly aware of LaMarcus Aldridge. And Ferguson's just late on the rotation. Davis is so big, he's going to shoot over the top even if a defender is there. And here they're just moving the ball. They continue to move it until they find the open play. 4 passes in. 5 passes, 1 relocation dribble, and Davis is wide open. And again, they're moving bodies and ball. The ball is moving from strong to weak, and OKC has not dealt with that very well. And here, when they do deal with it well, Davis has it rolling pretty well. And when you're 6'10" and you can get the ball over the top of almost any contest, if you allow him to get going, it's going to be a long night.
You definitely don't want to allow him to get going. And it's just hasn't been just him, the whole Spurs bench. The Spurs bench has been great. They've chipped in points. Bertans, Bellinelli, all those guys have gotten active and gotten involved and have really given the Spurs an advantage. Here you see Bertans is simply coming off for that screen right there, hitting that 3. Now Patty with the great pass. Bellinelli comes in, king of the off-balance shots, a nice little runner right there. Now we have Pau Gasol. He misses, but guess what? The bench is there to help him have his back again. Bertans with a nice follow. Patty Mills, another nice layup. So this bench for the Spurs has been very active. It's given them a lot. The starters have been pretty good, but the bench is what separated them in this game, and the fact that for OKC, Paul George and Russell Westbrook have really struggled from the field.
And doing all of this, by the way, on the bench without Rudy Gay tonight as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Paul George, Russell Westbrook, just 4 for 19 so far from the field. Why can't they find their shot?
Well, I think as opposed to the way San Antonio is playing, moving bodies and ball, OKC has really stagnated what they're doing. You see there, Paul takes a contested 2. The ball stays on the same side of the floor that the offense is initiated on. Again, Russell misses a contested layup. That's a shot he typically makes, but look at how many of these shots in this package where the ball is shot from the same side of the floor it was initiated on. None of those clips we showed you of San Antonio's offense involved that. It's a completely different approach to the offense. They're relying very much on 2 guys to create everything for them, whereas San Antonio is going to the concept that the ball finds energy, and Popovich has made it incumbent upon everybody to just play totally unselfish.
When you see OKC's 2 stars struggling, you think, okay, well, they're still in this game because you have a guy, Abdel Nader, 8 minutes, 10 points, no misses, Brendan.
Well, he's been very effective, and you see right here, there's a nice drive right there and taking it to the basket very strong. Once again, a quick crossover and floating with the offhand. So he's been very aggressive, and he's maximized his opportunity. When you're a young player in this league and you're trying to find yourself another great high arcing shot off the backboard, and you're trying to find yourself in this league and you're trying to find your position, when there's a night when your team needs you, when your stars aren't playing well, and they give you an opportunity, you have to walk through that door and take advantage of that opportunity. That's exactly what Abdel Nader has done. And they've needed all 10 of those points that he scored, they needed that to even be in this game right now.
I love this matchup because styles make a fight. These 2 teams couldn't be any more different in so many different ways. OKC's dead last in the NBA of number of passes over the course of the season, and San Antonio is just a work of art right now when they move the ball.
Certainly we'll see if OKC can get it going with Paul George and Russell Westbrook in the second half. When we come back, we're going to take a look around the league. Abdel Nader continues to shine for the Thunder. That was a nice game.
By with the man of the night.
Thanks, guys. Well, Dennis, after you lose a close.
So the Oklahoma City Thunder bounced back after falling to the San Antonio Spurs 2 nights ago, 122-112. And Dennis Schroeder, what you don't see there, the 4 steals and the big plays he made down the stretch, Brendan, for OKC, he was incredible.
Schroeder, Abdel Nader, they were both incredible off the bench. They came in with incredible energy, and Schroeder, especially in the second half, end of the third, beginning of the fourth to the middle of the fourth quarter, he really brought some energy. He was the spark. He was the reason why the OKC Thunder were able to win this game tonight. That trade that they made, giving away Carmelo Anthony to get Schroeder in, it didn't seem like a big deal in the summertime. This is probably going to be one of those deals that we look back, if OKC makes a run, it's going to be because of the play of guys like Schroeder and what they were able to do.
Well, it seemed big from a financial standpoint. It was a $70 million proposition. Oof. And at the time, everybody talked about it as though it was a cash savings deal. And I think you've seen now that Sam Presti and his staff had a really good understanding what Dennis Schroeder could bring to this team, and every night he's getting an opportunity to make an impact, and it's not a surprise that they've got Dennis and Russ playing together down the stretch of big games.
Are you surprised at how much of an impact he's had defensively for them? Because those were the plays that really stood out most this game against the Spurs.
I'm not surprised because he had the talent. It's not what he was doing before. And I think this environment is one that he's taken to. The culture there in Oklahoma City, the accountability that Billy Donovan has brought to that team obviously is something that Dennis is wearing very well.
Brendan, we got some Karl Anthony Towns, 27 rebounds, the most by an NBA player this season. 27 points to go along with that. Oh, yeah, and a stop on Anthony Davis in the final seconds of this one. Just an amazing performance from him. And he just seems aggressive. And this is what we thought we would get from him at the end of last season, beginning of this season. He's certainly out of his shell.
Yeah, he's taken over as the leader that they wanted him to be. You heard during that broadcast that he's starting to lead some of the other young guys as well. And the rebounding performance stands out to me among the many things that's unique right now with this version of Karl Anthony Towns.
I agree with you totally. He's having a great, he's doing great from a rebounding standpoint and from a scoring standpoint, and he's now the leader. I think that trade kind of worked out for both teams. Philly needed somebody like Jimmy Butler to score on the perimeter, and Minnesota kind of needed Jimmy Butler to be out of the way so that Karl could become who they envisioned him being, because it was just never going to work with Jimmy there. And that's not a knock on Jimmy. It was just he was in the way of the growth of Karl Anthony Towns. We're seeing him play a lot better basketball right now.
And certainly, even for Andrew Wiggins, who took 21 shots, he was just 7 for 21, but down the stretch, he looked more confident and comfortable with the ball in his hands.
Well, I think for Andrew, it comes down to, once again, he had to adjust to being the third option when Jimmy Butler was there. Now that Jimmy's not there, Tibbs is no longer there, I think he feels a certain level of freedom. He now knows that he has more range and he has more opportunity because he's now the true number 2 option. So his role is more clearly defined as it was a couple years ago. When you're the third option, that's tough. You have to be the most selfless person, and sometimes that doesn't always work out. So I think Wiggins is more comfortable in the number 2 role, and I think Ryan Saunders will probably be a more mild-mannered coach, and I think that'll work well with Wiggins' personality.
Well, I think you saw their second-best player today might have been their bench as a whole. They outscored the Pelicans 36-7 off the bench. And with Mirotić now playing just his second game back after missing 16 games, and Peyton finding form, trying to find form after missing 31 games, he's only in his 6th game. It's unfortunate in the Western Conference that you say this because it's such an unforgiving conference. But they're now 3 games back in the loss column of a playoff spot, and this New Orleans team doesn't really have the time to find a rhythm. They need to just hit the ground running right now, and it's hurting them.
When you look at the situation in New Orleans, a lot of times the conversation is, oh, Anthony Davis, well, he needs to do a little bit more. But when you look at that bench, they only have 2 guys that scored off that New Orleans Pelicans bench. You can't expect to win games, especially if you're trying to make a playoff push. Like the Pelicans and the Timberwolves are 2 teams in that playoff picture. But if you're not getting bench production, that's going to be tough, right, bro?
How many people scored off the bench?
2. And they got 13 points total. It was 9 from Mirotić and 4 from Darius Miller. I'm sorry, 3 players. Frank Jackson also with 4.
Wow. Yeah,
So 3 players.
It's going to be really hard to score with that level of bench production because you sometimes need a little bit of pop off your bench, just something that can give your starters a little bit of a blower when you go to your bench can lift your team up. When your bench is struggling like that, that's not a good sign.
Well, what you really see that they lack, Anthony Davis had 5 fouls late in this game. And there was a situation where it's a 3-point game. Karl Anthony Towns gets the ball on the left wing and just rips and goes right by Mirotic. Well, that needs to be Anthony Davis guarding him, but he's got 5 fouls. They don't have another defensive big that they can put into a game to do anything to stem the tide against a guy like Karl Anthony Towns. They just don't have the depth of size right now for a lot of different reasons, and it showed tonight again.
Yeah, that's certainly an issue that New Orleans clearly has. And then flipping back over to Minnesota and looking where they're headed, Ryan Saunders now 2-1 as the head coach there. That's a situation where this time last week it was like, okay, they made a change. It seems as if this team, win or lose, they're headed in the right direction as far as where their mindset is.
Well, I think sometimes it's about, is everybody on the same page? And fair or foul, I don't think a lot of the younger players were on the same page with Coach Tibbs. And so if you realize that and your management going forward, then you have to get somebody in there that relates to those younger guys, can convey the message that you want conveyed from upper management standpoint, and then we can move forward with that plan. And I think Ryan Saunders fits that mold.
And you can tell they're buying into it.
Yes, certainly great to see Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis go at